Hi everyone, this is Mary, you're in Mary Reads, and in this video we're going to be talking about Nora Ephron's Heartburn. Nora Ephron is an American journalist and writer. She wrote a bunch of things. So Heartburn is her only novel. She also wrote a bunch of essays as well as screenplays for movies like Sleepless in Seattle, Julie and Julia, You've Got Mail, When Harry Met Sally, a lot of famous movies that we all love. And this is the only novel she has. So my thing with this novel was I wasn't sure if it's going to be good because there was so much going on. So the woman finds out, the main character finds out that her husband is having an affair with another woman who they both knew. And our main character is 7 months pregnant, so she's almost about to give birth. And she is a cookbook writer, so the book promises us a bunch of recipes as well, and she's going to try to win her husband back while being pregnant and while also giving us the recipe. So I thought that it's going to be a lot, especially in a 176-page book. But jumping from the start, I was wrong. I really loved the book. There were moments that I thought were questionable, but they didn't really count compared to what the book really is. So right from the start, from the first page, we find out that our main character finds out about her husband cheating on her. So she finds a children's book that her husband's lover gave to her son. And in the book, she wrote something along the lines of, I hope soon we're going to be able to read this book to your son together. I love you so much. Stuff like that. And so she basically right away realizes that her husband has an affair. And she knows the woman who her husband is sleeping with, so she gives her short description, which I really, really liked. Thelma Rice, a fairly tall person with a neck as long as an arm and a nose as long as a thumb, and you should see her legs, never mind her feet, which are sort of splayed. I really love the description, and the whole book is going to be in this sarcastic manner. I really like how she reflects on that period of her life. Obviously, I'm pretty sure it was very painful finding out that your husband has an affair with another woman when you're 7 months pregnant. It would be hard finding it out anyways, but when it's 7 months pregnant, it's even worse. So yeah, I really like how Nora Ephron was able to transition from that grief to such a sarcastic manner and write her whole book, her reflections on that period in her life with such a good humor. So our main character soon finds out that Thelma's husband knew about the affair from the beginning, but he decided to let it go. He didn't do anything about it, and he was just caring about keeping his wife with him and saving the marriage. Even though it wasn't a first affair and Thelma didn't really love him and she didn't treat him right. And that was the moment that I didn't understand. I assumed that that was really what happened, but I really can't understand how you let your partner do something like this to you, and how do you decide that it's better to stay in such a relationship than leave and find something better. But I guess if that's based on a true story, that very well might have been the truth. And unfortunately, there are a lot of stories when this is the reality, and this is what husbands or wives who find out about the affair decide to do. So we find out that Rachel, the main character, and her friend Betty have been discussing the affair that Thelma Rice had for a while. They just didn't know who it was. So they were trying to figure out who she was sleeping with, and they said, oh, okay, so she shaved her legs even though it's still winter, and why would she do it for her husband? She never did that before. Or she was talking about condominiums for a long time, and they thought that somebody else was talking about them as well, like the senator or somebody. And they thought, okay, fine, if they both talk about that, then that means that they're sleeping together. And when Rachel told Mark, her husband, about it, such talks stopped. So she's reflecting on that period in her life, and she says, there were signs. I can see them now. So I was telling my husband about this weird thing that she had, and then she stopped doing it, but she just never realized that it was her husband she was sleeping with. So I think it's very interesting how sometimes there are signs, but we just either decide not to see them, or we actually don't see them because we trust the person so much. And later there's this funny comment about Betty, Rachel's friend, who they are discussing the affair with. And Nora Ephron says that, well, our main character says that Betty could go to a dinner party in Washington and the next day she could tell you who was about to be fired just on the basis of a seating plan. And I thought that it's very interesting. It's a very common topic to talk about how girls, women can find out about affairs or about some, like, as in this case, who is going to be fired, just by, I don't know, seeing a picture or searching on Instagram or something. And it's just very interesting how that is apparently a thing. And the book was written in 1983 and it was still a thing. I think it's just very funny. So on the next page, there is another funny moment that I really loved. And it talks about how Betty and Rachel were discussing President's assistant, who was calling Betty in the middle of the night and saying, "Meet me in the rotunda and I'll tickle your tits," and other bizarre remarks encompassing Washington and sex. "What should I do about it?" Betty said one day at lunch. "Tell him that if he does that to you again, you'll call the newspapers," I said. "I did," said Betty, "and you know what he said? You haven't lived till you've squeezed my Washington Post." I thought that this is an inappropriate moment, but extremely funny. And again, I really like how Nora Ephron is able to be sarcastic and funny in the book that talks about a divorce, a very, very sad situation. So yeah, reading these moments was just very fun. It brought this lightheartedness to the book that sometimes we would see slowly going away with just the drama that's happening in the book. So then Rachel tells us how, again, there were signs and how her husband would every afternoon emerge from his office over the garage and say that he was going out to buy socks, and every evening he would come home empty-handed and say, "You would not believe how hard it is to find a decent pair of socks in this city. 4 weeks it took me to catch on." So for 4 weeks he was buying socks and never bringing even a pair, and she didn't realize what's happening. I mean, they live in Washington, not in some sort of a very, very far, super small city that doesn't have many stores or doesn't have good quality stuff. Like, they live in Washington. How come your husband goes to buy socks every evening for 4 weeks and you don't suspect anything? That moment I thought is very hard to believe. I didn't really believe in it. I don't know if that's a true story or no, but, well, I mean, that is something that I didn't really enjoy, because that just feels so stupid. You think that anybody would figure it out. And when Rachel found out what's happening, she found out about the affair, her husband told her that he wants her to stay with him. And you would think, okay, that's a good moment. That's so nice. He decided to choose his wife over a lover, and he wants her to stay with him. But no, so he said that he called her horrible names, and that he said he still loved Thelma, but he expected his wife to move back in with him and stay with him. I feel like that's so horrible. That's so mean. So first you cheat on your wife, on your pregnant wife, plus you have a son already. Then you tell her that she's a horrible person with very, very strong words. And then you tell her that you still love your lover and you're not gonna stop seeing her, but at the same time you expect your wife to stay there with you. First, why do you need your wife if you decided to say all these horrible things and if you're in love with another woman? Second, just why? Why are you being so mean? So as we're moving through the chapters, we find out about the backstory of Rachel's life. We find out about her mother, who was an agent for actors in Hollywood, and she really enjoyed cooking. And this is where the first recipe comes. This is a recipe for lima beans and pears. And I realized that I couldn't tell what's wrong with me and the recipes in a novel. I mean, cooking is fine, having recipes is fine, but there was something that just bugged me, and I realized what it is. I think that having recipes is first throwing you out of the story. So you're following the story, and then you see this random recipe that is put in the book when it didn't have to be put in the book. And it just throws you out of the story, and you start thinking, okay, why do I need this recipe? Do I start cooking it? What do I need this for? If I wanted to cook something, I would buy a cookbook. And it just drags me out of the story right away. And then you have to get back into, you need to find something interesting that would help you like get back into the story again. And my other problem with recipes is that it's just, I don't know if I should trust these recipes. So the author of the book is a journalist. She wrote screenplays. So how do I know that these recipes are detailed enough? How do I know that this recipe is good enough? If I wanted to cook something, I would buy a cookbook. I bought this to read a novel. And even if there is a recipe, if there is an interesting recipe, I would just probably write down the name and then find it in a cookbook versus cooking based on the instruction here. So I don't really understand why you need to put the recipe. And yeah, that's what kept dragging me out of the story every time there was a recipe. And there are many recipes. There is like in the end, there is a full list with the recipes that were used. And there's like more than 10 of them. And you just don't understand why. So the book is already 176 pages. I love the story. I love the humor. Just give me that. Don't give me the recipes. Had to open the window because it was getting a little dark. So we keep reading about her mother, and her mother got into the hospital and she was dying, and her father was there. They were married for many years, for a couple of decades, and he was standing next to his wife's bed waiting for her to die. He was saying, pull the plug to the doctors, and the doctors would calmly explain that there was no plug. There was just the wasting away of life. It looked to me as like a slightly ridiculous situation. If you wanted your wife to die so much, why would you stay with her for 30 years? Or why would you so openly show how much you hate her and don't want to be with her? I don't know if that's something that people actually experience, like staying in a marriage when you don't love each other already, when you openly admit that this partner doesn't suit you anymore. I don't know if that's a real case, but it just looks ridiculous to me. I feel like if you don't love the person, you talk to them and you decide if you want to stay together and work on the marriage, or you want to leave. You don't just stay married to the person and ask doctors to pull the plug and just help her die faster. So her mother dies in the hospital, and the nurse puts a sheet over her face, you know how they cover the bodies, but then suddenly the sheet starts moving and her mom bursts out of the cloth and shouts, "Ta-da!" and then she fainted. It looks a little surreal. I guess it's theoretically possible that a person loses a heartbeat for some time and doctors think that they're dead, but they come back to life, you know, they wake up. Yeah, but ta-da, the surprise, I'm still alive thing, just looked a little bit ridiculous to me. But again, it worked well with the story because the story was itself lighthearted and funny. So it didn't look like it comes from some other book and it's not supposed to be there. Then we get back to the present and we see Rachel's reflections on her marriage. She says that she of course, it wasn't what I wanted in a husband. On the other hand, what I wanted in a husband was Mark. So it was a very sad paragraph, because it's true that even if a person betrays us, we still love him. It's not like we stop loving a person if he does something bad to us. We still love him. It just hurts more. So, and even though he wasn't a perfect husband, she still loved the man. She still loved the father of her children. She loved the person she fell in love with in the first place. And it's very hard. I feel like it is very hard to see if, do you want to stay with a person and forgive him, or do you get a divorce and then you go through a lot of pain, but eventually you get back to normal and you find somebody else to love, you know? So I thought it was a very, very sad and painful moment in the book. Rachel decides to go back to New York from Washington. This is where she lived before, and this is where her father lived, and she stayed in his apartment with her son. And she was reminiscing about New York. She was remembering how she would go to the store, and every time she was distressed, she would go and buy these fresh vegetables. She says that even the vegetables in New York are better. I don't know about 1983, but in 2023, it's extremely, extremely questionable. Food in New York is far from being the best. And it's hard to find good quality products. That's just my me ranting. It's nothing about the book. I'm very sure that in 1983 food could have been better. It's just my pain that I keep talking about and that I can't let go. So yeah, and then we get another recipe that again just threw me out of the book, and it was the recipe for the sorrel soup. So Jonathan, the husband of Thelma, the lover, comes to New York to see Rachel, and apparently he tells her that he spent half the night talking to Thelma and Mark, trying to make them realize that what they're doing is wrong, and that Thelma should get back to being with her husband and Mark should get back being with Rachel, because they're waiting for a kid, and like, it's not right to cheat on your partner. And I just keep thinking how Jonathan gets more and more annoying of a character, just because it looks like he doesn't have a spine. It looks like he doesn't care. He doesn't have pride, and pride in a good sense, you know, when you see that the person is really not respecting you, that it's time to leave, and he still is sitting there trying to squeeze these last bits of love and make her stay with him, and just begging her and even her lover, to let her go. And he asks Rachel to do the same thing. He says, return to your husband, get back with him, I'll get back with Thelma, and we will wait it out. So Thelma had other affairs, and with time they just went away, and she stayed with me. The same thing is going to happen with Mark. Like, your baby will arrive and you will both be busy taking care of the baby, and she will be with me, he will be with you. Let's just do that. Let's just be these partners who decide to stick to their husband and wife. And obviously Rachel says, I can't do that. I don't understand why I would do that, because, well, he betrayed me so much. And I agree with her here. And Jonathan just stays an annoying character because he does such stupid things. He just doesn't get better. He stays this annoying character. And since Jonathan talked half the night with Thelma and Mark, he found out some details about the relationship, and he told Rachel that Mark was ordering her flowers, he was renting hotel rooms and ordering room service. And Rachel says, room service, he even had room service with her. And a lot of times people say how it's not sex that's so painful. It is, obviously, it hurts when your partner has a physical relationship with somebody else, but it's little things like attention that he pays to Thelma that annoys even more. It shows not just the physical connection, but also the emotional connection, which leads to love. eventually, and that's something that hurts even more than just purely having a sexual relationship with another person. And later, Jonathan says that he and Thelma have an honest marriage. That's why Jonathan knows all about Thelma's affair. And I just think this is not an honest marriage. Having affairs and then admitting to them when your husband finds out is not an honest marriage. Honest marriage would be sitting together, figuring out what's going on, and admitting that there is a problem and deciding to work on this problem together. Not just saying, you know what, I have an affair and you deal with it. So then Rachel's father comes and he sees Jonathan. He says, what's going on? And Jonathan and Rachel both tell him that this is what's happening. This is the affair that's going on. And her father says that he hates Mark and he thinks that he's being a jerk. And that's why he prefers to be friends with women, because men turn out to be such liars and horrible human beings. But then we find out that her father had a mistress and she remained his mistress even after her father divorced Rachel's mom and married again. So he was just marrying other women, and this Frances stayed his mistress for many, many years. And we see that her father is being the same jerk that he hates, and that he does the exact same thing as other men do. And then again, we see this weird paragraph about food. So we're discussing her father. She says, the truth is that if my father weren't my father, he would be one of the men he hates. He's incorrigibly faithless and thoroughly narcissistic to such an extent that I tend to forget he's also capable of being a real peach. And we're talking about the father, and then the next paragraph, in the brackets, another thing I like to eat when I'm feeling blue is bacon hash. So why? I feel like this is so not needed here. We're talking about this emotional thing. We see how her father is actually not the person he claims and believes he is. And then we have this serious conversation, and then we get this bacon hash. Why? I don't understand. I feel like this just, again, threw me right out of the story. Rachel starts thinking about her future. She says, who is ever gonna love me? Who is gonna sleep with me? Who is gonna be my next husband? Where am I gonna get the money from? I have 2 kids. And she says, who is even gonna love my stretched out body? And she says that the only person who can love me is probably a doctor. And then she remembers how she dated one of the doctors. She stuck a ballpoint pen into a hangnail, and he took a look at it and said, diabetes. So I didn't really understand, how can you tell that a person has diabetes by looking at their finger? I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so maybe you can, but I just feel like that's so weird. It's not like he took her blood test and realized that she has diabetes from that, but just by looking at her finger. And she said that after that case, after that short-term relationship with the doctor, she doesn't want to date anybody connected to a medical sphere. And she says, but who else would bother with me? There I was, 7 months gone, sway-backed, awkward, bloated, with a belly button that looked like a pumpkin stem and feet that felt like old cucumbers. Again, I love how funny the book is, how the main character and the author is able to laugh at herself. I feel like it's so important in such a dramatic book, because if we kept just seeing drama, it would be very sad. But this makes the book more alive. It makes us feel more alive, feel better, and realize that even in desperate situations like this, there can still be good stuff, and something good can happen. So Rachel stays in New York and decides to go to the group therapy she used to go to. She graduated from there. She was very happy because she she was married once before, and then she met Mark. And once she met Mark and they realized they want to get married, she graduated from this group, and she was very happy she can leave it. But then when all this situation with the divorce happened, of course, she decided that she needs to return and work on her problems. She gets on the train, and she's wearing a diamond ring that Mark gave her after their first son's birth. And she says that she twisted her diamond ring inwards so the muggers wouldn't see it, and tried to concentrate on how I was going to tell the group what happened to me. So true about New York and having to keep your belongings either at home, something valuable at home, or just try to hide it. That is a big issue and a very sad issue, that you get something nice and you can't even wear it just because it's so dangerous on the subway, because you get all types of people there. And actually this is what happens to her. So she covers her ring, and she's going on a subway, and she sees that the man is looking at her, smiling at her, and then winking at her. And she thinks, okay, he's cute, but I wonder what's wrong with him. Like, he's winking at a pregnant woman who is minding her own business, who is not really paying attention to him. So what's wrong with him? And later in the book, their group gets mugged, and it turns out that it's exactly that guy who she saw on the subway. She got scared of him when she was on the train, so she decided to carefully put her ring into her bra. So she kind of showed that she's itching her neck or something, and she slipped the ring into her bra. But he noticed it, so when he mugged their group, he knew where the ring is going to be, and he said, you know what, give me the ring. And he left with the ring. The whole group ended up in the police office, because obviously they called the police right away. And Rachel was able to tell who this mugger was, what he looked like, because she saw him on the train, and that eventually led to the police finding them and finding the man and returning the ring. So we move through the chapters and we learn about how Rachel and Mark met. They met at a party, and Rachel's friend told her right from the beginning, don't bother being with this guy, he's not very nice. But Rachel decided that she liked him. He was very, very handsome, and he was smart and funny, so they went out to dinner, and they fell in love with one another. But as their relationship kept progressing, Rachel found out that he was cheating on her, and she told him, you know what, that's it, I don't like that in the relationship, I don't want that, so I'm leaving you. But Mark made her stay. He was apologizing, he promised that it's never going to happen again, and he started proposing to her, even though she was telling him, you know what, I'm not going to do it. He was still proposing to her, and he said he will keep proposing until she says yes. And eventually she did. She said yes when they were on a plane from New York to Washington, and she agreed to marry him. And it feels like there were red flags before they got married, even that cheating thing. If not that, then just how Mark was talking to her when he was telling her that he wants to hear a yes from her regarding the proposal. And what I don't understand is why she didn't notice those red flags. She was married before, and she left her husband after he cheated on her with her best friend. So when you see this the second time, why do you get into it? Why do you get involved instead of running away from this man? But we'll later find out that Rachel thought that Mark would learn his lesson. She says, I honestly believed that Mark had learned his lesson. Unfortunately, the lesson he learned wasn't the one I had in mind. What he learned is that he could do anything, and in the end there was a chance I'd take him back. So this is actually true, not just in a book. It's an actual truth. based on your behavior, your partner is going to see how to what to do next. So if he sees that you're forgiving him for something bad that he did, he will keep doing that. He knows that you're not going to leave him. He knows that it worked the first time, it's going to work the second. And this is what Rachel realized, that when he first cheated on her and she forgave him, he realized that he can do it again in the marriage and nothing is going to happen to him. So that's why he cheated again, and he did it so openly. Mark comes to New York from Washington, and he wants Rachel to come back. He says, "I love you," he said. He said it with the animation of a tree sloth. "I want you to come home," he said. "You belong at home." And even though Rachel knows that these words don't really mean much, she wants to hear them. She was hoping to hear them, and she returns to Washington with him, even though she realizes that he's gonna still see Thelma. And this is where 100 pages end. I'm definitely going to be finishing the book. It looks very interesting, and even though not much action is happening, even though it's mostly reminiscing on the affair and thinking if I should keep the relationship or I should leave, even though there's not much going on, it's very interesting, and it's very, very lifelike. I think everybody can relate, even if they didn't experience their partner having an affair. I think that it's something that everybody knows about so much that you can relate to this book very, very well. My only thing with that is, except the recipes that I think are still not needed, is that in this book it looks like everybody's cheating on everybody. There was only one normal couple that didn't have any issues with that, and it just looked so weird to me because not every couple experiences infidelity. Why is the thought of infidelity so strong in Nora Ephron's book? Is it because she just noticed all of those bad things because she was going through a divorce herself and she just heard a lot of stories about affairs and divorces? Or is that just her trying to make the book more intense? That was my only big thing. And yeah, other than that, I love the book, and I'm definitely going to be finishing it, and I'll tell you more about it in what I read in October video. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.